Hey everyone, welcome to the Novice Workshop for the D. I hate when that happens. Start strong and I stumbled.
All good, all good.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Novice Workshop for the Data Science track, which focuses on Python. Our instructors for this workshop are from SMOC, the Student Machine Learning Coalition. Please say hi to Sanjana, Joseph, Aswin, and Michael. Sanjana, how you doing?
I'm great. Hi everyone. My name is Sanjana and I'm a junior at Limburg High School, and I'll be teaching you guys a little bit of Python today.
All right. Joseph, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. My name is Joseph Thomas. I'm a junior at Bellarmine College Prep in San Jose, California. And today we'll bring you a bunch of stuff about Python and some of the foundational skills you'll need in the language to be successful in data science.
Great. And then we also have Aswin. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. Hey everyone, my name is Aswin. I'm a sophomore at Bellarmine College Prep, and I'll be giving you guys a quick refresher on Python and some basic functions.
All right. And last but not least, we also have Michael. How you doing?
I'm doing great. My name is Michael Butts. I'm a senior at Bellarmine College Preparatory, and I'm really hoping that this is beneficial.
All right. Well, that's everyone here. Let's go ahead and get started with the workshop.
Okay, cool. I'll share my screen. Okay. So today we're going to be just having a short introduction on Python, the coding language. So this is just generally what we're going to be going over today. We're going to start off with the introduction of what Python is, and then we're going to move on to variables and data types, and then we'll move on to print statements and input statements, and then just quickly go over lists. Okay, so introduction. So first off, we need to understand what Python is. So Python is a coding language that was created and is used for both its simplicity and its readability. So basically, you can think of Python as one of the few coding languages that can be easily read and understood by someone who doesn't know coding at all. And another thing about Python is that it is case and indent sensitive. So when you're writing your programs, you need to make sure that you have the correct functions that you're going to use and you're indenting properly for loops and stuff, which we'll go over later. So we'll move on. So the importance of Python is that it's become especially useful in data science, and Python allows programmers to not only visualize data, but you can also conduct complex calculations, build machine learning algorithms, and so much more. So it's becoming more and more important to computer scientists, engineers, and data scientists to understand and be able to code in Python. Okay, so we'll move on to variables and data types. So these are the four basic data types that you need to know in Python. The first one is strings. So strings are basically lines of text, and these lines are set off by single quotes or double quotes. Next, we have integers. These are regular numbers or whole numbers, and they are not decimals, but they can be positive or negative, and also zero. And then next we have floats. These are decimal numbers, and even a regular number with a decimal is a float. So basically, if you have any number, like let's say pi 3.14159, that's considered a float. But if you want to change that to an integer, you get an int 3. So 3 is the integer that it would be categorized as. So next we have booleans. These are basically true or false values, and these are especially used when you have if conditionals, which we'll also go over. And basically when you want your program to figure out if an expression is true or false, you would run a conditional and then it'll give you a true or false statement. Okay, so these are the data conversion functions. The first one is bool. This turns a variable into a Boolean value. And then the next one, we have float. That turns a variable into a float value, but that cannot work with letters because, again, floats are numbers. So you can turn an integer, 3, into a float 3.0. And we also have string that turns a variable into a string. So this works for both numbers. So if you had a number 3 again, which I'll keep using, you can convert that into a string with double quotes, and it would just be a string 3. And then last but not least, you have the int data conversion. This turns a variable into an integer, but it doesn't work for letters again, or a float with a decimal value. Okay, so here are just some applications of conversion. So you can use the input function to take an input from the user. And because the input function defaults to a string value, you can use float or int to convert that data type to whatever data type you want to use. And we'll also go more into this. And then we also have the type function. This basically checks the data type of any variable that you have. And again, if this all seems a little confusing, we will be going over the implementation on how to use these functions as well. Okay, so next we have print and input statements. So a print statement basically displays a value of a string to the screen. So for example, when you write this print statement here, this is a little complicated, but basically it prints whatever is in the parentheses to the console. And so the print statement has the string data type, and this string data type is either 0 or more characters. And this is just examples of how to indicate strings. You can use single quotes or double quotes in Python. And so we also have user input. So here is another example of how to use the input function. And you can either put a string inside the input function, or you can just leave it blank. It'll still get the input from the user. And so basically, yeah, it gets the input from the user through the console, and it assigns it to the variable that you define it as. So in this case, our input would be entered, and then we would assign that value to num. And input is always a string, like we said before, but you can use the data type conversions to convert it into different data types. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to go over lists really quickly. So lists are basically just a group of values, and these are set off by brackets. And it's another type of data in Python. And it's important to know lists because they can hold multiple values and multiple data types. And you can keep track of inputs, or you can create data sets with lists. And other types of data types like arrays and series are all based on it. So yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go to the live demo. I'll switch it over to Joseph.
Thank you. Yeah. So real quick, I'll just share my screen here to give you the code and how we're going to be using that. So give me 1 second. Awesome. So basically what we're going to be using here today to actually do this implementation is what's known as Google COLAB. And in case you don't know what that is, it's just basically something provided by Google that is a way for us to just write our code out and make it really easy to understand and just run parts of it at a time so we can more simply understand where our errors might be coming from and how we can fix them and just get our programs working as quick as possible. So to get to that actual website, all you have to do is type in Google COLAB, and the first link is probably going to be what you need, which is just Welcome to Collaboratory, Google Research. Click on that. And then from there, I'll take you to a page here where all you have to do is just hit File and then create a new notebook. And once you've done that, you will get somewhere over here. Let's see, 1 second here. Yeah, so once you get here, you'll just simply open a notebook. And then all you have to do is open up the file here, which is going to be our actual walkthrough. And then here, as you can see, it's empty, which is exactly what you want as well when you're first starting off. And as Sanjana mentioned, Python is a case-sensitive language. So first off, I'll just show you a simple example of that. Let's say we said that test equals 1, which is just an integer. And then we can also have a separate variable, which is capital T test equals 1. And those two things are different. So let's say I wanted to print out, let's make this 2 actually. Let's say I want to print out the lowercase test. It's going to print out 1 there, whereas if I printed out the capital 1, the capital T is going to print out 2. So we can simply show that real fast. And we see there are different variables. So that just shows the fact that Python is a case-sensitive language, which is something you should definitely know when you're writing any of your programs with Python. Next up, we'll just go into the different variables here, things like Boolean, strings, floats, and all the stuff that Sanjana mentioned in her presentation. So first up, let's just create a Boolean. We'll call it Boolean 1, and we'll just make it true. We can also have Boolean 2 and make that false. There's 2 simple examples of what a Boolean look like, and note the capital T, not the lowercase t. If you're familiar with any other language like Java, you might know that the true is actually lowercase there, but note that in Python it is capitalized. Next up, let's make some other variables like a float. We say float1, for example, equals 1.54, and note that it's not 1, it's just 1.54 with a decimal value. However, we can also do 1.0, which is also a float because it has the decimal there. Now, following floats, we can also do some other variables as well. We can work with like integers. So let's do int1 equals, let's say 5 as our integer. We can also make a string, string1 equals, let's say hello world. And these are some basic examples of what our different data types are going to look like. And those are the main ones that Sanjana went over. And we'll also go over other ones as well, like lists, which are important too. But for now, those are the basic couple ones you want to know out for data types. Next up, let's also go over data conversion, which is, like Sanjana mentioned, converting these different data types to other ones using various functions like Boolean, bool specifically, or int and float, stuff like that. So let's say we want to make this float right here an integer. What we could do is just make a new variable called float_int and just say int in parentheses there, the 1.54, or specifically the actual variable, which was float1. And as you can see there, I actually made a mistake here because float1 is just 1.54 for the case here. A simple example. And then we can print out just float int, just see what it looks like right now, float int. And we can see that it just basically truncated the end or dropped off the end to 0.54. That's exactly what's going to happen when we're converting to an int from a float. So it's not really rounding it as you might think in math, but it's more just sort of truncating the end off to get that actual value. And next up, we can also do the same thing here with other sort of conversions. For example, we can convert the Boolean also over to an actual string. So for example, let's say we say Boolean1 underscore string equals string, let's say string str, then Boolean1, and then what this will do is just make that Boolean a string. And we see that it's actually like in blue right here, but when we do conversion to a string, it becomes a simple string like any other string, like hello world. It doesn't really have any meaning within Python just because it's a string like that. So that's one way to note for converting that. And then, of course, other ways also include the float, which is just like this. I won't go to a specific example, but it's the exact same thing. Let's say we have the integer int1 there, which is 5, it'll make it 5.0. Things like that that are very simple and allow us to convert from different data types. So if you want to look into those as well, I definitely recommend that. There's really important ways to show how you can convert these different values to different data types and work with them in your implementation and programs. Next up, let's also go over some other important parts of Python. Specifically, we're going to go over the applications for data conversion, which has to do with the inputs and getting inputs from the user. So let's say we have a simple question we want to ask the user, like answer equals input, and then say, what is 2 plus 2? That's going to be our question. Let's run this real quick. Let's say 2 plus 2 we know is 4, but something you might be wondering is, what's the actual data type of what we put in there, which is 4? And you might think it's an integer, but actually it's going to be a string. And that's the input of anything we actually ask the console or ask the user via any question. So what we want to actually be able to do is convert that answer over to an int. And though we do that, it was simply by just doing the int thing, which was actually what we saw earlier. So we can say answer underscore int equals int, and then our answer there. And that just makes our answer an actual integer that we can work with, let's say like an if statement, a for loop, things like that later down the line that we're going to be going into. And then just for some brief notes as well, there are other sort of cool things you can do with Python, such as math functions like .pow, which is a way to take the square root to any value, actually square root, the third root, whatever you want to do using Python and those mathematic functions. So let's say we saw the answer here was 2, or whether it was 4, because 2 plus 2 is 4. Let's say we want to square that. we can do print and then pow, and then our answer was 4. We can plug in answer underscore int and then do comma 2, and this will give us 16 there because all we did was took the square of 4, which is our answer, and then made that 16. There are various other functions as well, like abs, abs to get the absolute value, things like that, that are really important to Python as well. And next up, we can also do something cool as well, like range, which gets us a different range of values. So let's say we say x equals range 5. And I'm going to do a for loop here real quick, which is something we haven't taught yet, but it's just a simple way to get the values of this range, just to show you a basic function. So let's say we say for n in x here, we can just print out the n here. And all this does is just prints out the range of values that we got, which is another cool function that Python has that you might want to be aware of. And that pretty much is going to be all we really have for the simple and basic implementation beyond and besides loops and the conditionals, which is going to be part of the next video, such as some simple stuff in Python that Sanjana was going over, like the important data types, the strings, the integers, the floats, and also converting those different types as well to other ones to work with them down the line and be more adaptable in your programs.
Okay. Now, before we leave this meeting, first of all, I wanted to thank all of you for coming here. It means a lot that people are willing to learn more about STEM. And it's such an exciting field, I feel, when you get to know more about it. So once again, thank you all for showing up to this workshop. This was brought to you by the Student Machine Learning Coalition. Just wanted to give us a quick shout out at the end. SMLC is essentially a youth-led organization that aims to make machine learning more accessible by spreading resources and working on collaborative projects. Currently, we have 8 chapters spread across the San Francisco Bay Area, New Jersey, Nepal, and India. And if you're interested in learning more about SMLC and what we do, you can check out our website, www.smlc.dev, to learn more and potentially to start a chapter of your own. In other words, if any of this was interesting to you, definitely check us out. We have a lot more in store.
All right, thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot, Sanjana, Joseph, Aswin, Michael. Obviously, for anyone who has questions, we will have contact information in the video description below. And since this is on the Tech Tree Root YouTube channel, you can also check the other videos we have for the follow-up video for this, the refresher and intermediate and visualization workshops, also for other languages. So check out both of our companies, Tech Tree Root and Student Machine Learning Coalition. We would love to help you learn more about CompSci, and feel free to connect with us further. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you around.